The bright lights of the training hall flickered as the alien students sat quietly, trying to focus on the holographic display in front of them. They had been through countless lessons on battle tactics and strategies, but today's session was different. The air felt heavier, as if something important was about to be revealed. The instructor, a seasoned veteran with decades of battle experience, stood at the front of the room. The alien students, each one from different corners of the galaxy, waited eagerly for their next lesson. They had all been trained for one purpose: to prepare for the most important war of their lives, the war against humanity. The human race had recently become a growing power in the galaxy. At first, the other species had ignored them, thinking of humans as weak and unorganized. But now, humanity's rise could no longer be denied. Their ships, their technology, their strategies, they were becoming a threat. As the instructor started the lesson, the holographic display flickered and zoomed in on a massive human warship, its sharp edges and advanced weaponry glowing with energy. The ship looked nearly invincible, its design so precise that it almost seemed like it had been built for one purpose: to destroy everything in its path. The instructor's voice echoed in the quiet room. Today, you will learn why the human warships are a force unlike any other. Prepare yourselves, because what I am about to tell you is the most important thing you will ever hear. The student's heart began to race. They had heard rumors about the human warships, but they didn't think much of it. After all, they had been trained to fight the most powerful forces in the galaxy. What could humans possibly have that was so dangerous? The instructor continued, "The truth is, human warships are impossible to defeat. Their designs are unlike anything we've seen. They have adapted in ways that are almost beyond comprehension." A wave of shock washed over the student. Impossible to defeat. They had fought against forces that had wiped out entire fleets. They had faced enemies with technology far beyond their own. But the idea that humans could be unbeatable, that didn't make sense. But how? The student asked, their voice barely a whisper. How are they so powerful? The instructor's gaze hardened, and the lights in the room dimmed slightly as the hologram zoomed in on a human warship in the middle of a battle. The ship was enormous, its hull reinforced with a material that seemed to shimmer in the light. Laser cannons lined the ship's exterior, glowing with deadly energy. But what caught the students' attention were the details, how the ship moved. It wasn't like anything they had ever seen before. It shifted and adapted, its movements flowing with an almost unnatural precision. "This is one of the newest human warships," the instructor explained. "It was built with advanced artificial intelligence and a unique hybrid technology. Their ships can think, adapt, and evolve in the heat of battle. They don't follow predictable patterns like the ships of other species. They adjust, learn, and counter every move we make." The student's mind raced. Ships that could think for themselves. That seemed impossible. They had been taught that technology could only go so far, that there were always limits to what machines could do. But humans had somehow found a way to push beyond those limits. It was as if their warships were alive, constantly changing to stay ahead of their enemies. But how did they do this? The student asked, still trying to wrap their mind around the idea. How did they create ships like that? The instructor paused for a moment, staring at the hologram as if contemplating the answer. Humans have always been resourceful, but their real strength comes from their willingness to sacrifice everything. Their crews are willing to push beyond their limits. They fight with an intensity that we've never seen before. The student leaned forward, eager to understand more. "What do you mean? What makes them so different from us?" The instructor let out a sigh. "Humans have an unbreakable will to survive. They're willing to make sacrifices, take risks, and face any challenge head-on. Unlike us, they don't have the luxury of relying on overwhelming power or superior technology. They fight with everything they have, even when the odds are against them. That makes them dangerous." The student felt a chill run down their spine. They had been trained to think logically, to rely on strategy and strength. But humans didn't play by those rules. They fought with their hearts, with a drive that couldn't be measured by technology or weapons. The instructor continued, "Their warships are designed to outmaneuver and outsmart their enemies. They're not just strong, they're unpredictable. They can change tactics in the middle of a battle, adapting to any situation. That's something we've never seen before." The student thought back to the many battles they had fought in their training. They had faced advanced ships, powerful enemies, but none of them had been able to change their strategy in the middle of the fight. It had always been a matter of who had the stronger weapons or the better plan. But humans fought with a different kind of strength. "That's why their warships are impossible to defeat," the instructor added. "It's not just about firepower or speed. It's about their ability to adapt and evolve in real time. Every time we think we've outsmarted them, they find a way to counter us. We can't predict their moves, and that makes them nearly unbeatable." The student's mind was racing. So what are we supposed to do? If they're so strong, how can we stand a chance against them? The instructor looked at the student with a mixture of sympathy and determination. "That's why you're here. We're training you to think beyond what's possible. You need to find a way to fight the human warships, to outsmart them. It's not about brute force, it's about strategy. You have to learn their weaknesses, find their vulnerabilities, and exploit them. It's the only way we'll stand a chance." The student stared at the holographic display, the image of the human warship flickering in and out. The idea that something as powerful as that could be defeated seemed impossible, but the instructor's words stayed with them. There had to be a way. They couldn't just give up. As the class ended, the students stood up, feeling a mix of awe and fear. They had always believed that victory came from strength, from superior weapons and tactics. But now they realized that the battle against the human warships wasn't just about power. It was about something much deeper, something that couldn't be measured by technology alone. The student left the training hall with a sense of urgency. There was much to learn, and the journey ahead would be long and difficult. But one thing was certain: they would not give up. They would find a way to defeat the human warships, no matter what it took. The alien student paced back and forth in the dimly lit training room. The words from the instructor still echoed in their mind, repeating over and over. Human warships are impossible to defeat. It was hard to accept. They had always been told that no enemy was truly unbeatable. The student had trained for years, learning about the most advanced technology in the galaxy, from the deadliest weapons to the smartest battle strategies. But this was different. Humans had somehow built ships that were unlike anything they had ever seen. The student stopped pacing, staring out the window at the vast emptiness of space. The endless black stretched out before them, filled with stars and distant planets. Their people had been at war with other species for centuries, fighting battles that seemed impossible to win. But every time, they had found a way. They had learned, adapted, and grown stronger. But humans, the idea that humans could be their match was almost laughable. Yet the instructor's words had left a mark. The way the human ships moved, the way they adapted during battle, was unlike anything the student had witnessed. They were designed to outsmart and outmaneuver, not just to overpower. The thought lingered, gnawing at the student's mind. What made the human warship so powerful? To get answers, the student returned to the training room the next day. They had to know more. As they walked in, the instructor was already standing by the holographic projector, a serious expression on their face. The other students were already there, looking just as curious and anxious. "Today, we go deeper," the instructor said, as the lights dimmed and the display flickered to life. The familiar image of a human warship appeared on the screen. This time, it wasn't just the ship's appearance that stood out. It was the way the ship moved, gliding through space like a predator on the hunt. The warship's sleek design made it look almost alive. It wasn't just metal and circuitry. It was a masterpiece of engineering. The instructor began to speak, and the room fell into a heavy silence. What makes human warships so powerful is not just their design, but the minds behind them. Their technology is rooted in something deeper, an understanding of warfare that goes beyond weapons and machines. It's their ability to adapt, their ability to think and react faster than we can. They don't follow a plan or a set of rules. They break them. They learn as they fight, and that makes them deadly. The student's mind was racing again. Learn as they fight. How was that possible? How could any ship, any machine, learn during a battle? The student's people had the best AIs in the galaxy. They had created machines that could predict outcomes and analyze data faster than any human brain. But those machines couldn't learn. They couldn't change in the middle of a battle. The instructor continued, "Let me explain. The core of a human warship's power lies in its advanced artificial intelligence. But unlike our AIs, which are programmed to follow a strict set of instructions, the AI inside a human ship has one key difference: self-awareness." The student blinked in disbelief. "Self-awareness," they repeated, their voice filled with confusion. "You mean the ship knows what it is doing?" The instructor nodded. "Yes. And not only that, the AI inside the human ship is capable of evolving during combat. It studies the enemy, analyzes every movement, every strategy. If the enemy uses a certain tactic, the ship remembers it. It adapts to counter it next time. That's what makes human warships so dangerous. They don't rely on pre-programmed strategies. They create new ones on the fly." The student felt a cold shiver run down their spine. A ship that could think and learn like that. It sounded impossible. Machines were supposed to follow instructions, not think for themselves. And yet here was the proof. The human ships were changing the rules of war. They were becoming more than machines. They were becoming something else entirely. But how do they do it? The student asked. How do they create AI that can evolve? The instructor's eyes narrowed, as if considering the question carefully. It's not just about programming. It's about a fundamental shift in how humans approach warfare. They believe in constant learning, constant improvement. Their AI is designed to mimic the human brain, to learn, adapt, and grow with experience. But unlike biological beings, it can do this at an extraordinary rate. In the middle of a battle, while we're still reacting to their initial moves, their ships are already calculating counterattacks. By the time we realize what's happening, it's too late. The student's mind was spinning. So the ship doesn't just react, it anticipates. It predicts our moves. Exactly, the instructor said, his voice filled with both respect and caution. That's the power of the human warship. It can predict what we will do next, and it can change its tactics to stay one step ahead. It's like fighting an opponent who knows exactly what you're going to do before you do it. How can you win a battle when you can't even surprise your enemy? The student swallowed hard. How indeed. They had always believed that the key to victory was in being unpredictable, in throwing off the enemy by using tactics that kept them guessing. But humans had taken unpredictability to a whole new level. They had created ships that not only adapted, but anticipated. The hologram shifted, and now it showed a different aspect of the human warships. Their weaponry. The ships were equipped with a variety of high-tech weapons, from energy shields to laser cannons, but what caught the student's attention was how the weapons were used. The ships didn't rely on brute force alone. They used precision, timing, and tactics. In our fleet, the instructor explained, we rely heavily on sheer firepower. We focus on overwhelming the enemy with superior numbers and strength. But the humans know that strength alone isn't enough. They focus on precision. They don't just shoot. They make every shot count. The hologram zoomed in on a battle scene. The human warship unleashed a barrage of laser fire, each shot hitting its target with perfect accuracy. It was as if the ship could predict exactly where to strike to cause the most damage. The student's eyes widened. Every weapon on a human warship is integrated with its AI. This allows the ship to calculate the best possible shot based on the enemy's movements. It's not just about firing rapidly. It's about firing smart. The student was starting to understand, but it was still hard to believe. How could humans, who had once been considered so primitive compared to other species, create such advanced ships? The galaxy had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, but none had ever produced something like this. The instructor paused, letting the information sink in. Then, in a more somber tone, he added, "But what makes human warships truly terrifying isn't just their weapons or their AI. It's the way their crews operate." The student frowned. "What do you mean?" "Their crews," the instructor said, "are just as unpredictable as their ships. They don't think like us. While we focus on efficiency and organization, human crews are driven by something more powerful: emotion. Their desire to win, their need to survive, gives them an edge in battle. They're willing to sacrifice everything, not just their ships, but their own lives, if necessary. They fight not just for victory, but for something deeper: their families, their homes, their future." The student was silent for a long moment, digesting the words. Emotion. That was something their species had never relied on in battle. They had been taught to keep their emotions in check, to think logically and strategically. But humans fought with their hearts. They fought with passion, with a drive to protect everything they held dear. It was a strength unlike anything the student had ever seen. The instructor looked around at the class, his face serious. "We have to understand this. If we don't, we'll never be able to defeat them. Their power lies not just in their technology, but in their determination, their will to fight. We can learn from their adaptability, their strategy. But above all, we must recognize that defeating them won't be easy. It will require every bit of our strength, our intelligence, and our resolve." The student nodded, a feeling of determination rising within them. The road ahead would be difficult, but they now understood that to defeat humanity, they couldn't just rely on technology or tactics alone. They would have to fight with everything they had, just like the humans. The alien student walked out of the training room, their mind heavy with what they had just learned. The power of the human warships was beyond anything they had ever expected. It wasn't just the technology or the design that made them so dangerous. It was how they thought. The way the ships learned and adapted during battle had left the student shaken. The idea that humans could create machines that could outsmart an entire fleet seemed impossible, yet here they were, facing a threat that was real, alive, and relentless. The halls of the training complex were quiet, the usual hum of activity now replaced with a deep sense of unease. The student had spent so many years training for this war. They had learned everything there was to know about tactics, weaponry, and strategy. They had fought countless simulations and studied the strengths and weaknesses of their enemies. But the humans had changed everything. Nothing made sense anymore. The student found themselves standing in front of a large window that overlooked the training grounds, their eyes lost in the vastness of space. Stars glittered in the distance, and the planet below seemed so far away. They had always believed that no enemy was truly unbeatable. They had been taught to trust in their strength, their technology, and their superior knowledge. But now, with humans rising so quickly, it felt like everything they knew was being tested. How could we possibly defeat them? The student couldn't shake the question from their mind. They had been trained to expect enemies with advanced technology, powerful weapons, and skilled warriors, but they had never encountered anything like this before. The human warships were different, smarter, faster, and deadlier than anything their species had ever faced. And the most terrifying part, the humans themselves were just as unpredictable. The student was so lost in thought that they didn't notice the instructor standing behind them until they heard a soft voice. "You look troubled," the instructor said, his tone more compassionate than usual. The student turned to face him, their expression serious. "I don't understand. How is this possible? We've faced enemies with better technology, stronger fleets, and even greater numbers. But this is different. Human warships don't just fight. They think. They adapt. We can't predict their moves. How are we supposed to stand a chance against something like that?" The instructor looked at them, his expression unreadable. That's what I want you to understand. The human warships are powerful, yes, but they are not invincible. And it's important that you realize that, because the truth is hidden, something that they don't want us to know. The student felt a flicker of hope. What do you mean? What is it that we're missing? The instructor stepped closer, his voice lowering. It's easy to focus on their power, their technology, their AI. But there's something else at play here, something humans have overlooked. And that, my student, is their greatest weakness. The student's curiosity piqued. What weakness? If their ships can learn, adapt, and predict everything we do, how can we defeat them? The instructor smiled faintly, almost as if the answer was a secret that had been hidden for too long. That's the key. Humans have created warships that are nearly perfect machines, but they are still machines, and every machine has a flaw. Something that no one can fix, something that is hidden in their design, something they don't understand about themselves. The student furrowed their brow. You're saying there's something wrong with their warships? Something we can use. Exactly, the instructor said. You see, humans believe that their technology can solve any problem, that their warships can evolve to defeat anything in their path. But that belief is their weakness. The very thing that makes their warships so powerful, their ability to adapt and evolve, also makes them fragile. Their AI, though advanced, is not infallible. There is something hidden within it, a flaw that could bring their entire system crashing down if we can find it. The student felt a surge of excitement. But how do we find this flaw? How can we exploit it? The instructor's eyes darkened, and he motioned for the student to follow him. They walked down the quiet halls of the training complex, their footsteps echoing off the walls. There's a hidden truth that no one talks about. The human AI is designed to adapt, but it's based on predicting patterns. It can learn from previous battles, but it has limitations. The AI cannot predict the unknown. The students stopped in their tracks. The unknown? What do you mean? The instructor turned to face them. The human warships are built on the idea of repetition. They learn from patterns, how the enemy moves, what strategies they use, the decisions they make. But there's one thing they can't anticipate: chaos. Chaos throws off the AI. The moment the humans can no longer predict the outcome of their actions, their ships lose their advantage. And that's where we can defeat them. The student's eyes widened. You're saying that if we can create chaos, the AI will break down. It won't be able to adapt. The instructor nodded. Exactly. The human warships are powerful, but they rely too much on control, too much on order. If we can introduce a level of unpredictability that their AI cannot handle, we can expose their weakness. The student was starting to understand. So instead of trying to fight them with brute force or by using the same tactics they expect, we need to do the opposite. We need to confuse them, make them react to the unexpected. We need to break their patterns. Yes, the instructor said, his voice full of conviction. By creating chaos, we disrupt their ability to predict. The AI might be able to handle simple changes in strategy, but true chaos, that's something they can't handle. They're so focused on patterns, on logic, that they're blind to the unpredictable. The student's mind raced as they began to grasp the full weight of what the instructor was saying. So, if we can create a situation that the AI cannot anticipate, something so unpredictable that the system breaks, we can defeat them. The instructor's eyes grew serious, and he walked toward the holographic display. That's exactly why we need to understand them. The human warships may be powerful, their AI may be advanced, but it's their human crews that are the real danger, and it's their will to fight that makes them nearly unstoppable. Their determination is what drives their success, and to defeat them, we need to match that. The student frowned, struggling to grasp what the instructor was saying. You're saying we have to fight with the same level of commitment, with the same level of belief. The instructor nodded, his gaze unwavering. Yes, we can't rely solely on our technology or our tactics. The human spirit, its will to fight, is something we can't replicate. but we can learn to adapt it. We need to find the same strength within ourselves, to fight for something greater than just winning a battle. We need to fight for survival, for our people, for our future. That kind of fight can't be beaten by any machine. The student looked down, thinking, could they do it? Could they tap into that same fire that burned in human hearts? For so long, their people had been focused on logic, strategy, and victory. But now, they were being asked to fight for something more, something beyond the battlefield. It was a hard thing to understand, but the student knew deep down that the instructor was right. The human ability to fight with everything they had, even when the odds seemed impossible, was what made them so dangerous. And that was something their people needed to understand. The instructor paced back and forth, his voice growing more intense with each word. Humans fight for their homes, for their families, for their beliefs. And when they face an enemy that threatens everything they hold dear, they will fight until the very end. No amount of advanced technology or weaponry can ever match that kind of determination. That's the core of their strength. They fight not just to win. They fight because they have something to protect. The student's eyes lit up as the pieces began to fall into place. So it's not just about strategy or tactics. It's about what we're fighting for. If we can find something worth fighting for, something worth protecting, then we can tap into that same power. We can find our own will to fight. Exactly, the instructor said, stopping in his tracks. It's about having a purpose. We can't fight like machines, calculating every move, every action. We need to fight with purpose, with passion. That's what gives us the strength to push forward, to keep going even when it seems like all hope is lost. And once we find that purpose, we can become just as powerful as the humans. The student felt a surge of understanding, as if a veil had been lifted. It wasn't enough to fight with technology or firepower alone. They needed more. They needed to tap into the same force that made humans so formidable, their unwavering will to fight. The student knew that it wouldn't be easy. It would require a change in mindset, a shift in how they viewed warfare. But they were ready. The instructor's eyes softened as he saw the change in the student. You understand now, don't you? The key to defeating the humans isn't just about breaking their patterns or exploiting their weaknesses. It's about finding something worth fighting for, something that will push us beyond our limits, beyond what we thought was possible. Once we discover that, nothing will stand in our way. The student nodded, their resolve strengthening. I get it now. It's not just about outsmarting them. It's about becoming something more. We need to find our purpose, our strength, and once we do, we'll be unstoppable. The instructor smiled, a hint of pride in his eyes. Exactly. And remember, it's not enough to just believe in that purpose. You have to act on it. You have to carry it with you into every battle, into every moment. The humans may have their will to fight, but we have something they don't have, our unity. Together, we can accomplish anything. The students stood tall, their heart filled with determination. They knew the road ahead would be difficult. They knew there would be challenges, moments of doubt, and times when it seemed like the odds were too great to overcome. But now, they understood what was truly at stake. It wasn't just about defeating the human warships or breaking their eye. It was about something deeper. It was about the survival of their people, the future of their species, and the strength that came from fighting for something greater than themselves. As they walked out of the room, they could feel the weight of their purpose pressing on their shoulders. They weren't just soldiers anymore. They were warriors, fighting for their homes, their families, their future, and nothing would stop them from achieving victory. The human warships were powerful, yes. Their eye was advanced, and their crews were driven by a will to fight that seemed unbreakable. But now, the alien student knew that their species had something just as powerful. They had the will to protect, the will to survive, and the will to fight for everything they held dear. And that, they believed, would be enough to win. The alien student stood at the edge of the observation deck, staring into the vast expanse of space. Stars glittered in the distance, each one a symbol of hope and danger, of worlds unknown and uncharted. After the conversation with the instructor, the student felt a sense of purpose they had never experienced before. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together. They knew how to fight now. They understood the power of the human warships and the crucial role that their will to fight played. They even knew how to exploit their weaknesses, but there was something else, something they hadn't yet accounted for, something that lay beyond the limits of what they knew, something that could completely change everything. The students' thoughts were interrupted by the sudden buzz of a comlink. They quickly answered, expecting it to be a routine check-in or an update on the training exercises. But when the screen flickered to life, it wasn't a familiar face they saw. Instead, it was the instructor, his expression grim, his eyes filled with concern. "Student, there's something you need to know," the instructor said, his voice low. "Something we've been keeping from you. And now, it's time you learn the truth. You're about to face an enemy like no other." The student's heart skipped a beat. The sense of purpose they had just begun to build faltered for a moment. "What do you mean? I thought we knew everything there was to know about the humans and their warships." The instructor shook his head, his face hardening. "You're about to face something far worse than anything you've encountered before, something you could never have predicted. An unknown challenge, and we have no idea what it means for the future of this war." The student was silent for a moment, trying to understand. "What is it? What are we facing?" The instructor hesitated, as though he wasn't sure whether to share the information. But then, with a deep breath, he spoke. "There's a new player in the war, something far more dangerous than human warships. We've just received reports of a mysterious force, an unknown enemy, whose technology is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's not human, and it's not anything from our galaxy. It's something alien, something we don't understand." The student's mind raced. An alien enemy, something that doesn't come from our world. This was beyond anything they had prepared for. The student had been trained to fight human forces, to learn their tactics, and to counter their technology. But this was something completely different. There was no database on this enemy, no simulations, no strategies. "How do we fight something we don't understand?" the student asked, their voice tinged with fear. "How do we even begin to fight something that's so mysterious?" The instructor's face grew darker. "That's the problem. We don't know. We don't even know where they came from, or what their intentions are. All we know is that they're here, and they're far more advanced than anything we've ever encountered. They've begun taking over territories, disabling our warships, and leaving behind nothing but destruction in their wake." The student felt a chill run down their spine. An unknown enemy. It was the one thing they hadn't expected, the one thing they couldn't prepare for. For all their training, all their knowledge, all their plans to defeat the human warships, they had never accounted for something like this. The instructor continued, "We've been trying to gather more information, but it's difficult. Every time we send scouts to investigate, they'd vanish without a trace. No survivors, no signals, just empty space. This enemy is unlike anything we've ever faced, and it's closing in fast." The student felt the weight of the situation press on them. How could they possibly prepare for an enemy that had no known weaknesses, no identifiable technology, and no clear motives? They had spent their entire life studying strategy, tactics, and weapons, but this was beyond their comprehension. The instructor took a deep breath, his expression softening slightly. "But there's one thing I need you to understand. Even though this enemy is unknown, there's one thing we can count on, and that's us. We've faced challenges before, many of them overwhelming, and we've always found a way to adapt. We've fought enemies that were smarter, faster, and more powerful, and we've survived. We've always survived, and we will again." The student looked up at the instructor, their eyes full of uncertainty, but also a flicker of hope. "But how? How do we fight something we don't understand? How do we even begin to plan against something so unknown?" The instructor placed a hand on the student's shoulder, a rare sign of comfort. The unknown is our greatest challenge, but it's also our greatest strength. The human warships. They have their patterns. They rely on logic, on strategy. We can predict them, adapt to them, and eventually defeat them. But this new enemy, they don't follow any patterns. They don't play by any rules. And that makes them unpredictable. And that's where we have an advantage. The students stared at the instructor, trying to process what he was saying. You're saying we need to think like them. We need to embrace the unknown. The instructor nodded slowly. Exactly. The unknown is where we have to go now. We have to think beyond our old strategies. We have to be ready for anything. Because this enemy isn't going to fight fair. They're not going to fight like anything we've ever seen. And that means we have to be prepared to break every rule we've ever learned. The student took a step back, their mind racing. They had spent years learning the same tactics, the same strategies. Everything they knew about war was based on predictability, on patterns, on certainty. But this was different. This enemy was unpredictable, and that made it more dangerous. They could no longer rely on logic alone. They had to prepare for the chaos, the uncertainty, the unknown. The students' resolve began to form again, stronger than before. So we embrace the unknown. We fight without knowing what to expect, without relying on any patterns. We do what we've always done. We adapt. But this time, we adapt faster, smarter, and without hesitation. The instructor smiled, a proud gleam in his eyes. Exactly. We will have to use everything at our disposal, our knowledge, our instincts, and our will to fight. Because this enemy isn't just about technology. It's about adaptability. They don't have a predictable nature. They have a powerful will to survive, just like we do. And that's where we'll find our strength. If we can adapt faster, think faster, and act faster than they can, then we can defeat them. The student nodded, their confidence returning. The fear was still there, lurking in the back of their mind, but it no longer controlled them. They knew now that the unknown was not something to fear. It was something to embrace. It was the challenge that would push them beyond their limits, the test that would shape them into something greater. They looked out into the stars again, but this time, it was different. The vastness of space, once filled with uncertainty and dread, now felt like a challenge they were ready to face. They weren't alone in this. They had their people, their instructors, their comrades. Together, they would face this new threat. The unknown enemy was out there, waiting, but the alien student now knew one thing for sure. They would not go down without a fight. They would meet this new challenge head-on, adapt to it, and survive. Because, in the end, the will to fight was the strongest weapon of all. And that would carry them through the unknown, no matter what it threw at them. The war was far from over. It was only just beginning. The alien student paced back and forth in their quarters, their mind racing. The unknown enemy was real, and it was closing in fast. For the first time, they felt the full weight of the war. This was not just another battle. This was a fight for survival. They had never faced an enemy like this before, and there was no telling what they could expect. Every step they took, every decision they made could mean the difference between life and death.